and welcome to season 2. I'm so excited to be back with Joe, and we've got some very special people on the show today. I can hardly believe it is February and it is the Monday of all Mondays. Okay, so before I go and start rambling, let's welcome our special co-host, Katie Salidas, and our guest tonight, Joshua Pantalleresco. And please, I hope I got that right.
Yeah.
Awesome. I try really hard with names because I know how awkward it can be when your name is like constantly misspelled or mispronounced. And I misspelled his name earlier, so I was like, of course. Like I said, it's Katie was.
I'm actually more bothered by people misspelling my name because although it tends to go, the algorithms do tend to go my way. Even like people not sounding my name, I'll actually give you bonus points if you come up with something original. Pants to the Rescue was usually the thing I got when I was in high school, and that was the regular one. But every once in a while, I get like a creative one, and honestly, if nothing else, you have a little imagination, I'll give you props for that. If nothing else, yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, I like to use excuse that it was like 4 a.m. when I was making the graphic, but yeah, no excuses. I was just like, oh no, I did it wrong. But yeah, so happy you're still on the show tonight, even though I did that. Really appreciate it.
I'm good. I'm good. It's all right. It's all good.
Yeah. My mom has a Korean name, obviously, so like hearing people like going through iterations of her name it was always like an interesting experience of like how they would try to like pronounce stuff. So I get the interesting names, but like I said, we have a special co-host tonight. Miss Katie Salidas was so awesome to agree to jump in. Why don't you introduce yourself for those who don't know you?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I think most of you guys know me by now, but yes, I'm Katie Salidas. I am the host and producer of the Spilling Ink show, which has been off the air for the last couple of weeks, but we're coming back. I've also got a bunch of different books, urban fantasy as well as nonfiction, and me and Joe, hopefully he'll be there this month, do a monthly news show.
Yes, Joe unfortunately has been under the weather this week, and so he's running things behind the show today. We're very grateful to have his skills as he's doing his little puppet master behind the scenes. Yeah, making us dance. We appreciate him spending the hour with us, even though we don't get to see his face. So get better, Joe. We're all wishing you the best. And Josh, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is JOSHUA Pantalleresco. I write stuff in podcasts too, as well as broadcasts, and apparently I also illustrate. I've been doing that for the last couple months. My show, Just Joshing, is approaching its 500th episode this week. It was originally just an audio podcast, but now it's an audio and video podcast. I interview authors and other creatives from literally all over the world, and we talk about anything and everything you can imagine. I make an ass of myself. I'm so good that guy even got an award for it. So, I mean, I've done this for a while. My next release is going to be called Lights Out. It's actually the first book I've ever illustrated for me. It's written by me as well. So I'm hoping that comes out in April, but we'll see. I mean, it's nearly done. So.
Oh, that is very, very exciting news. And the perfect segue into our in progress talk. I'll just say real quick, I am Julia. I write as J.K. Allen. And yeah, I've got some big news about my books coming up pretty soon. So find me on the internet and learn more about it. Hijinks writer. So, but yeah, in progress. I am all over the place today. Katie says it's because everything's in Aquarius.
Oh yeah. Just look at the star charts. It's insane.
It's all about change and things getting thrown out all over the place. So that's my brain right now. So you said you illustrated your book as well, Josh, or do you like Josh or Joshua?
Either or. Most people call me Josh. But I mean, I do get Joshua. So here's how I kind of look at it. Joshua is like when I put my name on a piece of paper or something like that, it's always Joshua. But when people talk to me, it's usually people call me Josh, and I'm good with that. But I mean, some people call me Joshua. My grandmother calls me Joshua. Usually, I'm in trouble when someone says Joshua, but it's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's one of those But honestly, I'm good either way. I most people are very comfortable with me being Josh. So anyway, yeah, that's so. What was your question?
You're illustrating your new book, you said, as well.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you've been working on this month. You're in progress, so.
Okay, so lots of things. This has been like my time to experiment and like just try anything and everything I possibly can for the last year. I set myself a goal 2020 when the pandemic started that okay, I don't know how long this is going to be, but I'm going to give myself 1 year to try do all these different freelancing things. And I gave myself to March 21st, 2021. And after that, I mean, I'm still going to be doing freelancing. I've definitely seen some successes with it, but at that point, if it's not where I wanted to be, I kind of made the goal that I'll diversify back more into a workplace environment. But for the last year, I've released 2 books. This is going to be my 3rd one. I would love to have it out before the 21st. I've done 3 books in a year, but I've been working on that. The illustration thing kind of just happened by accident. Well, kind of. My sister, at the very beginning of the pandemic, my sister actually bought me a red book. It says New Beginnings. And she said, oh, I'll just try and draw. And when I decided to turn to the podcast, it actually ties to the podcast a little bit, and decided to do a visual podcast, I decided to push myself out of my comfort zone, and which would be, I love illustrators. I think illustrators are some very amazing people, but they're also some of the shyest people I interview. Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be a really cool way to get around that. It would be every Friday on my podcast, I would do a drink and draw, which I'd invite an illustrator to come on, and we both would draw. I would draw, they would draw. And I've had some pretty big names show up on there, like people like Mark Park, Elsa Garza, Rich Perota. I just had Bill Mazia last week. He created Zen Intergalactic Ninja. I have some other big names coming up at the end of the month too. It's been like really cool to get these really amazing people to come draw. Well, after I started doing some illustrations, Mog emails me. It's like, you got no excuses. You've got to try and do it. So for the last 2 months, I've been doing drawing bids on that thing, and I've actually sold art pieces on both of them, not for a ton of money, but the fact is I never imagined myself doing it. So I'm like, right. Well, yeah. So now it's like, so I'm looking at my current book, which is a little homage to Fahrenheit 451. I'm like, it'd be kind of cool to do some nothing really sophisticated. I don't really need it. It doesn't need to be very sophisticated, but I'm playing with the idea of the light. Like we live in a very interesting, in one sense, Tower of Babel right now. Everything's connected to technology. Everything's very connected to the lights, like a light bulb. And a light bulb is one of the oldest mediums on the planet. If you really sit there and think about it, computer's language is based off a light bulb, on and off. So what if you could turn that into like a person, instead of throwing someone in jail, why don't you just cut them off from the light? What would that be like? And so I'm playing with some very old ideas, but also just this book has let me evolve as both a writer and apparently as an illustrator, because I'm doing that. My cover is going to be very basic, but my interiors are just going to be just me experimenting and growing. So
very, very awesome. In progress. Now, Katie, I just got your book in the mail, your new book, the Writing at the Damn book. So super excited. I got that, like I said, hopefully for me and my sister to share. If not, I might just be like, you need to get your own copy. But we'll see. I'm trying to be nice.
No. The goal is that book should be so helpful to you that you're like, no, you can't have my copy. You have to get your own.
Yes. But I'm very excited to dig into it. But what are you working on, and what's your in progress for this month?
It's funny that Josh mentioned freelance. I want to round back onto that subject, because that's kind of what I've been focused on. Through the pandemic, I kind of had a life change and needed to knuckle down and earn some more money. So I really started bulking up on freelance gigs and, all the a la carte services that I offer. I've been getting a lot more clients. I've been doing a lot more work for clients rather than my own stuff. So I really don't have a current project that I'm working on. But on the the plus side, I'm doing really good about getting some clients and getting some more longer term projects, so I can feel a little more secure. So I kind of want to touch with Josh on that and see how he's doing.
So I kind of shifted gears with the podcast, actually, with just So the biggest thing I learned very early on about freelancing was that you have to find a niche. And I tried a little bit of everything. I did audio. I did an audiobook. I've done written stuff. Like I've been published in Anime Herald. I've done a few articles here and content articles here and there. But like for me, it was just about really finding my niche. It never really occurred to me until like really like late, like early October, like mid-October. It's like, this interview thing, you could probably just turn this into a talk show and kind of just make it go from there. So what I've been focusing on for the last couple of months is trying to scale up my podcast and through my Twitch channel, my YouTube channels, and grow that way. Because for me, that is my niche. That's been my niche for a very, very, very long time. So, and the way you monetize a podcast, there's a couple ways you can do it. Like you can do sponsorships, which I had up until like December last year. I had my first major sponsor, which is kind of cool. I've done Patreon's been kind of hit and miss for me. I haven't really cracked Patreon. Patreon's very, I think I need to be more content heavy on there. And the biggest problem doing what I've been doing, I've been literally interviewing people every day. So it's been getting into the habit of setting up my content for YouTube, Twitch, and all that stuff. And I'm still doing my audio. So I've scaled. So my audience has grown. But now it's like, okay, now how do I incorporate my Patreon and my blog and my writing? And there's only so many hours in the day. So what I've been focusing on for the last couple of months is I've been putting out good shows. Hopefully people have been listening or watching or however they've been doing it. And hopefully they're just spreading the word, because I'm very proud of some of the interviews I've definitely done. Like that's the stuff I'm really like. I did a heavy metal night with Chuck Minoda. I'm really proud of. I interviewed Hank Philippa Ryan, an Emmy award-winning journalist, also a best-selling novelist. So I've had that. I've met some really incredible people. Now, like I said, so the financial end of it for the last couple of months has been like I took a step back. Now, obviously, I'd like to go a step forward with it from here on in. But it's like anything else, I have to grow my audience. So it's a really interesting. So my challenge at this point is scale, and that's what I'm focusing on right now, because that's the niche I've chosen. So for me to succeed at this niche, I wish I'd done this 6 months ago, because I would be so much farther ahead. But that's one of the things. Like I think the best advice I'd give anyone doing freelancing is this: don't take for granted what you do. It's a very very simple piece of advice, but sometimes what you do, it doesn't sink in right away how incredible that really is, until you realize, holy shit, I've done 500 episodes. I can do television.
Congrats, by the way. Yeah.
I can do television. I can do audio. I can do I edit. I can do all kinds of, in terms of my skill set, I'm literally a jack of all trades. I can produce and all that stuff. And I do it pretty much on my own. I don't have a crew. It's just me. So I've learned an awful lot doing this. And honestly, I do have to make a small mention. The audiobook experience I did also taught me an awful lot to make my sound process a lot better, which is great. I noticed that the quality is definitely a lot higher as a result of me doing that. But it's one of those situations where looking back, I kind of wish it hit me earlier. It's like, oh yeah, you should just go for what you love to do. And it didn't hit me the way it should have hit me until I realized it. So now it's like I'm almost at square one, but also at the same time, I'm not. I know what I really love to do, and I'm just focusing on that.
Like you said, the journey has affected your final outcome in a better way, like with the audiobooks and your audio being a better quality because of what you learned.
Everything leads somewhere. I think one of the things going back to freelancing is a mindset. As much as it is like what you do, it's very much your mindset. If you're coming in, so for me, so the second piece of advice I'll give to a freelance. I'm practicing a presentation while I'm here. Second piece of advice: treat your freelancing like it is your job. Even if you have another job, if you have a day job, look. I've done temp work throughout this time. I've done lots of cool little gigs here and there, and I've loved everything I've done. I have a very interesting resume as a result of this last year. But one of the things I realize is you have to go in there with the mindset that this is your job. This is not something you can just like treat it like a hobby. It's not. It's your job. It's your profession. And it's something you should take with a lot of respect and treat it like you would if you were going into a job. And a lot of people have a tendency, especially when they start, well, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not coming. Go in there and just say, you know what, I'm going to do my job to the best of my abilities every day.
Mm-hmm.
I get paid. Every month I have done freelancing, I have been paid. Every month I've done it. Now, sometimes it hasn't been very much, but I have done it every month. So the trick, you just got to always go out there. You have a certain like hunger in what you're doing, and then you just go for it, and you treat it like the podcast is my job. I don't treat like I have other things I do, but the podcast is it. It's not anything else. My books are my another form of passive income, and any articles I do, like it's literally that's 1, 2, 3. And I'm very focused on those 3 things. And I don't deviate from those focuses because this is what I do. If I don't treat this seriously, nobody else is going to treat this seriously. That doesn't mean that there isn't room for me to grow and improve. There always is. But what the important thing when you recognize this, like that's the mindset you got to have. It's not like, and again, having a little bit of desperation for money does not hurt you, right? It can't be the only thing that drives you either, because what will end up happening is you'll end up coming to a very interesting point of, well, I quit my day job not to resent doing my job. And the one thing you don't want to do is resent your creativity, which is why I say it's very important that you find what you love, what you're good at, and what you love to do, because this is a hard, grindy road. A lot of people don't necessarily take you seriously. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. And the reality of the situation is it's tough. Some months it's really, really tough. Other months I still love the one. There was 1 week last year I literally got a paycheck every day. It was fantastic. I loved it.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's the cool thing about freelancing, right? There's some months it just works out where all of a sudden it's like boom, cool, right? But that's how it works. It's very much like there's a mentality you have to have for it. I don't consider myself an employee. I never will again. No matter what happens, I'm not, and that means my days working, getting a day job are kind of numbered. Because I just don't have that mentality anymore. I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing this for anybody else. And that's you need to have that attitude. It's very important because you're serving, but if you're not getting what you set out to get, it's not worth grabbing. It really isn't. Go find something else. And on. Life's too short. Like life's way, way too short. So
I feel like this advice applies really well to those who want to do writing, as not just for like freelancers who want to do editing or author services, but also if you that whole like how you're saying like you just like gotta do your best and jump in. Like I feel like a lot of people are like either because they're nervous about how they'll perform, they don't treat writing seriously as their new job. When they make it their, this is what I want to do. I want to do writing. I want to do it full time. Maybe it's imposter syndrome, but they don't just jump in full feet.
It's scary. I mean, admittedly, it's very scary. It's a gamble. And, a lot of people will try it and will burn out on it. A lot of people will try it and be frustrated by the learning curve of how to manage not only their time, but manage their clients. And it's not the easiest route to take. It can be done, obviously, but it takes that dedication, just like Josh is saying. You've got to be dedicated. You've got to treat it like it is your actual job, because if you are doing it as a job, it is. And you have to learn how to balance yourself. You also have to know your worth. And that one is a huge thing.
Yeah, okay, so that one's is where I was about to get to, actually. So there's a very valuable word in freelancing. It's the word no. It's a great word. It sounds really simple. It's a simple little word. But
no, it's so hard. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Okay, there was a crowdfunding project I was asked to do, and I really wanted to do it. But the information I kept requesting never was given to me. And because the indication that and other red flags gave me the indication that this individual wasn't serious enough for worth my time to do it.
Right.
And unfortunately, like, they were a friend, which really sucks. Because it's not, because there's friendship, but there's business. I don't mind failing if I know everything I know how to do and it blows up. I tried my best, it didn't work out. I hate in particular when you feel handcuffed because your client does not heed what you're saying, is not ready for you, is forgivable, because that can be just, you discover that on your way, and that's far least damaging. But doesn't listen to what you say, doesn't give you the information you request, and right. So those are two of the reasons you fire a client. Actually, those are two of the four. The others, they're not ready. That one's forgivable, and also emotional instability, which this client was not emotionally unstable, but he fulfilled 3 of the 4, and I was like, gotta walk away. And then, so literally, once I walked away from that job, I got another job that paid more. It was doing something completely different, but I got another job that paid actually more than what they were going to pay me. And the important lesson, the important lesson there is, you got to use the word no. You also got to command, like, when I will still do audiobooks, like I will still do audiobooks and I will still narrate for you, but my rates won't go down. There's a reason for that, because I know what it takes. If I want $50 an hour essentially to do an audiobook. That's actually a reasonable rate when you consider the time, the effort, the energy, the editing, and the research.
The equipment you need, yeah.
Right, and even the research you have to do sometimes. Like the audiobook I did, I literally had to learn how to speak Esperanto. Like, I had to speak a little bit of it to understand actually how the tongue, the dialect, and works. Mandarin was in there too, but I had some experience with that thanks to video games, of all things. Dynasty Warriors, man, I love killing massive amounts of mooks, but that's another story altogether. But the thing is, like, you have to recognize everything you do. You're a problem solver. But it doesn't matter what end of the freelance spectrum you're on, whether you're editing, whether you're doing a service, whether you're writing, whether you're a problem solver. You're solving a problem for a client. So you have to recognize that you're saving them time, you're doing the service, but you're also costing yourself time and energy. And you have to make that decision very early on about the amount of time and energy this project's worth versus what you're getting paid for it. Now, sometimes you swallow it, sometimes, but more often than not, the wise thing to do is actually to walk away, because there are better jobs out there. So, and that's a very hard thing, but it's also like, you're a business. If you charge yourself like you're not worth anything, guess what? You will get nothing. We have this really weird concept, and it's something I understood. Your price tag, but equals respect. It's a weirdly dumb thing, but it's actually how it works. The more money you charge, the more people respect you when they pay it, right? So it's a very, very interesting little concept I've learned doing freelancing. This is why, like, for certain, like, I also add 2 little things. I add a resentment tax, and basically, right, I do. She's laughing, but she knows exactly what I mean by that. So this is the other thing too, and this is probably the best way to figure out your price. Yeah, right. Which is this: figure out in your own head what it will cost you to do a job, and not resent it, and then start at 10 to 20% higher. Because here's what you're doing: you're giving yourself wiggle room. Again, the last thing you want to do as a freelancer is resent your job. You don't want that ever, because you quit your job because you resented your job, right? This sounds really simple, but I mean, it's an honest truth. You resented your job. That's why you're doing this, right? You're not doing this because you're doing this because you want to. It's a hard way to make a living at first, especially at first. Once you establish a reputation, that's when things evolve. But you don't get to that point. You get that point one article, one thing at a time. Like me being who I am, it took me a while to figure this out. Like I said, 6 months from now, we'll see where my show, the podcast, and everything else is. I'm very curious where that's going to be when it's all said and done. But right, the whole journey, these are the things I've learned. I know what I'm worth. I know what I will charge. I will not, like, and again, if no one wants to work for me, that's fine too. Because at that point, right? No, because here's the thing. I'm not going to take what I feel I'm very skilled at and I'm going to waste it on people that don't want it. I would rather no one use it, right? I'd rather no one use it, and I'm happy not dealing with the insanity that comes with it versus, you know, right, over selling myself short. Because if I sell myself short, I'm going to end up back there anyway. So, I mean, I might as well just like, this is what it's going to take. You can come on and go for it or not. Find someone else if you don't want me, right? And that's it. Like, you got to have that line because it's the only way people will respect you. It's a really strange thing I've learned, but that's
yeah, that's all great tips. I do want to jump into audiobooks because you were saying you still do audiobooks, and it's kind of what I just find it really fascinating that you can reach a completely different audience with audiobooks than you can with your regular books. So I just want to pick your brain about audiobooks for a little while. Why do you think they're so important, and why do you think they do reach such a different audience?
Because people like how they sound. I mean, I really, it's a different medium. Like, honestly, I think one of the biggest things authors don't fully understand is it's almost like you're, damn right, Diddy, absolutely. I go my own way. I play by my own rules, and I always will. It's just the way it is. But the thing about okay, so the thing about audio is, and I learned this when actually doing the podcast.
Yes.
Sound is a medium all its own. And by and large, books do not fully tap into it. I mean, they can, but it's because books use description. And I find, like, when you get into the descriptive stuff, we don't tell, like, books aren't meant to be read aloud. And some people can. And reading aloud is a great editing tool. It does help. Its sound makes them more page turning. But when you read a book, most of us read it in silence and imagine the scenes being crafted in our head. That's why the descriptions are the way they are. Now with sound, that's a different tactile feeling with your story. It's almost like you're doing it's like you're telling your story in a completely different way. And because it's such a unique medium, and we're still, I think by and large, it's still a very young medium. For us today, the thing of it is, for authors, it's reaching people. People may not always also have time to read. It's also this audience too. People that, although it's not quite the same thing as it was normally, people would go take a bus or a train or a car to work, and you're like, well, especially if you're in traffic, like somewhere like LA, goddamn, I'm gonna be here a while. I want to hear something or do something, right? So there's that audience.
You know about that,
right? There's that audience. There's also this audience too. Words can sound really beautiful, and I mean, music. I mean, the reason why music is such a big thing is because how it sounds and how it stimulates. With books don't build necessarily to that, but there are some books that, because of it, when you read aloud, they emit beautiful imagery because it just hits the sensation very differently, which is really cool. And also, when a narrator brings their own creativity into it, this is the other thing too. Narrators are storytellers too, and they tell their stories. Like some of them are great actors, actresses. They bring out different things you never would have thought about your story because they see it, and again, it's almost like they can bring their own part of the story into it, which is really, really good. A good narrator understands, like, storytelling, and sound storytelling is a little different than it, but in some ways it's the same thing. You're still telling a story, right? It's right. So what different elements do you put into it when you're doing, like you said, the sound narration and the sound storytelling, as opposed to like when you're writing? Okay, actually, you can talk about this with dialogue a little bit too. When I write, because I've interviewed so many people, I have a my background, I love reading comics, and I interview people all the time. So I deal with dialogue all the time. So I find, like, if you can't write dialogue well, write it short. It sounds better when we're very concise, because the more concise it sounds something like the ear will pick up on. If you don't have the ear for it, that would be my biggest advice for anyone. Like, just, if all else fails, this is where Twitter's great, by the way. Going back to the old character thing, believe it or not, like that's actually a good model for dialogue. If you can put your dialogue in one of those boxes, it's fantastic. But because I've interviewed people so much, I have a general good idea what a conversation sounds like because I'm going back and forth with everybody all the time. So I can hear people. So it creates so when I'm doing that, like when I hear dialogue, that's what I think about is all the interviews I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm reading a story, I probably like when you're reading when you read the book first, or at least a portion of the book, so you get a sense of who the characters are you're voicing. Man, name just completely slips. Completely escapes me. But the guy I narrated, the voice I narrated, he was a lieutenant in the army that had been very, very war torn by this. They've been ravaged by this planet that's just devouring their resources bit by bit by bit by bit. Like the planet's trying to basically wipe them out, and he's just tired. Like his whole thing, there's like a quiet sadness. There was a sadness in his voice and his cadence, and he was traumatized too because it had taken so much from him already, and so it hit a certain point. Especially since they have to call because their food supplies were short, so they'd have to call their own people, just like the elders, so that the younger ones can live and survive. It was very harsh, very unforgiving. So there's a quiet sadness to him. Consequently, his first officer, she was a blast to voice because she was rowdy, she was loose, but she was also his conscience, which I thought was a really interesting. They had an interesting dynamic because it was like he was the proper traditional. He was a bit of a PS guy on one hand, and they had a great relationship because she looked up to him, and but in spite of everything, so that created a very fun dynamic, and you could see that. Right, you could see that in the story, and so that was the approach I took with him and her, how they interacted, and right, but every story is different, right? Some characters are like more manic, and also I don't do every character well. I don't think I could pull seductive off very well. It's just I don't feel like that's in my range. It's not like the other thing you gotta recognize too is every voice brings together different ranges. Now there are narrators that can do that and do it well. Their bears can be funny. Their narrators are like it's like anything else. We all bring certain strengths to the role. So when you look for a voice, the voice you're looking for should be one that you feel comfortable can tell your story, or at least can tell your story in a convincing way that you buy it. Right.
Right. All right. So since we're talking about voices, can you give us a couple different voice examples?
Yes.
I just use basically my own voice, but I mean, hold on. You want me to read something? Because I can just read it.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a second because I'm not prepared for this. Exactly.
Oh, I put you on the spot
there. Yeah. Sorry about that.
So, how about? Would you like to read from my list? Like, it's literally a rough draft, but you want to just read from my list to get
just a couple minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Give me a minute here. No, it's.
So tell us a little bit about the story you're going to be reading.
So this is Lights Out. So this is literally the first day. This is the first day with the lights about to go out. And if you recognize the name, yes, it is direct homage to that particular novel. Right.
Okay.
All right. So I've never read this out loud, so I'm kind of nervous, but we'll just do it. Silence. The lights flicked off, one by one, as if in concert. It was a short, sharp sock, and then was over. The world was a blank sheet of night. Montag knew his floor was in front of him, but couldn't see it. There were no curtains or walls. Maybe in time he adjusted this. Hard to imagine. The lights had been on his whole life, and now they were gone. What happens now? For what seemed like days, Montag just sat there, aware that he was there. He too was shapeless. He imagined making out a silhouette of himself. There was an outline, familiar squares and shapes. Montag ran his hands over his arms, felt warmth underneath. He was still there. No clue what happens now. Montag noticed he was breathing heavy. Thinking about breathing making it difficult. Underneath there were bubblings of butterflies. Montag's heart tried to race away from him in panic. It took great effort to keep a leash on his feelings. They said he would scream, but he wasn't going to just scream on cue. He was stronger than that. Montag gulped down a breath and told himself to relax. He even heard his voice loud. Relax, he told himself. You got this. He got up and walked. He was aware of every creak and cranny as he stood up. He wasn't just a figment of someone's imagination. The inkblot had shape and form, and Montag imagined himself as a moving line of ink as he walked into the darkness. He thought he heard an echo in front of him as he kept mouthing off random things. The amusement of saying those random things faded as he paused. His dresser was somewhere here. Montag fumbled until his ankle collided with the wooden corner. Fuck, that stung. Now Montag howled. Had to be a frickin' corner, too. He fumbled to the dresser front and found the latch. He opened the door. He fingered his underwear until he found the front and put it on. The dark made everything harder. He walked back to his bed, careful not to have any collisions with his bedposts, and found the pants he discarded last night. He nearly tripped putting them on. He grabbed his wallet and scanned his precious identity card. For the next 29 days, it would be off. It would open the door for him and close it. It would allow him to start his work and rehabilitation center tomorrow to start paying his debt. Otherwise, it was just plastic. No more late-night power-ups with his buddies. No more fried chicken parties with Leroy and Cypher. Just an empty card with one function. Montag's stomach rumbled. He was hungry. He had to go out and eat. No lights meant no food, no fridge, no cooking. It probably was the thing he missed the most. There was something fulfilling about cooking your own hamburger and mashed potatoes. The world is a great place when you provide for yourself. No lights, no provisions. Montag was indebted to the state. He was just a biohazard paying his debt. The door was somewhere in his blackened hell. Finding his shoes took a Herculean effort, the likes of which was usually reserved for campaign nights and killing Chimera hordes. But Montag did close his hands on the shoes. He put them on. Trying to tie them in the dark seemed fruitless. He could do it outside. He heard his footsteps in the silence, no one echoing in reply. More than the loss of sight, the blank tape of sound made the whole experience even more uncomfortable. Without the light, there was nothing. Montag was supposed to understand what nothing was. Nothing was unfathomable. The heart lurched from its leech for a second, and Montag grasped. Deep breaths, he heard himself growl aloud. You will not scream. You will not scream. Montag screamed. They were right. The state was always right. This is why they never started people on the first day. The adjustment tended to change people. 29 days couldn't get here fast enough. How is he supposed to deal with this? I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. That was great.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, sounds super great.
Yeah. Well, for the year, absolutely. So two of my favorite stories growing up was a short story called Nightfall by Isaac Asimov, and Montag is a reference to Fahrenheit 451. The only book that's ever scared me. The lack of empathy and the human spirit in like a dark time is something that oddly is very reflective of now. And I thought, well, might as well do something a little different. And I thought the idea of, like I said, the Tower of Babel has always fascinated me as a story. And in an odd way, we live in one right this minute. So I thought, okay, this is the right time to tell this story.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very interesting to think of like what the effects of like sensory deprivation and stuff would have on you as a form of punishment, as a form of control. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah. 7 days of grief. That like the first part of that novel is literally the 7 days of grief. It's interesting when we get to Act 2 and then Act 3. So
awesome. Yeah. So I have a question for you, because people are kind of in two camps. One is like plot is more important. One is characters are more important. I wonder does audiobooks, did that change the way you viewed like what was important to a story? Because you were saying earlier that the dynamic between the two characters was what was like really interesting for you as a narrator. But I imagine there's like the writing style and other things that, affects audiobooks as well.
I call myself a planter. You know what I mean? But what I mean by that is I do plot out some things. I know the end of this book. I don't know everything that happens in the book. I know a lot of things that happen in this book, but I don't know everything. I'm in Act 3 right now, and it's interesting. Some things I set up way back in Act 1 are coming to fruition in very fun ways. Yeah. But the thing about that is, I think plot is the canvas in which characters function. I don't think one is more important than the other. I think you need plot. You need plot for this particular reason. I think you need an environment in which you can put your characters into to make them to make a conflict, to make a actual
conflict,
situation, to make a situation in which your characters have to change, right? Or have an experience at the very least. And so plot's important, but the thing is, if your characters don't sing, the plot can be amazing, but
right.
the biggest thing I learned from my first novel and my second novel, especially with like one of the things I consciously did is I got rid of every said, asked, replied. None of that's there. Like none of it. I got rid of all that. I made sure that every action in everything in the story is an action. Everything is telling a different thing. Like I'm referencing, like even the imagery I put in the first thing is a lot of it's art. A lot of it's just different forms of art, a blank canvas, ink blots. Like they're very conscious decisions of imagery, right? And so I'm being very deliberate with the images I'm creating, hopefully to create the sensations I really want to hit you guys with. Like I want horror in Act 1. I want Act 2 to kind of be like, right, you know, the false, and then Act 3 I get to the really terrifying crap, and then right, and that's and also the right. Yeah, actually,
Very true.
Actually, most yes. So, first novel taught me that where plot is really good is it gets rid of the soggy middle problem. Like it's just like I don't know where I'm going at this point. Ooh, a unicorn, right?
Yeah.
Right. She's
yeah.
Right. That there's that. That's where plots are really good. But the characters will take you in different directions that you may not anticipate. So I think if I had to actually put a gun to my head, I probably would say character. But honestly, I think without plot, I think character loses something, and without character, plot just doesn't sing because every story's been told. So
yeah, very true. Yeah, I'm definitely a character like motivated writer myself. Like I live for my characters, right? I like get to know them and I fall in love with them, and I'm very conscious of like wanting to create like people that feel real. Plot is definitely important, but I was just like curious, like if it had, you know, like how doing audiobooks had like changed your writing. If you had in any way, you know what I mean?
Well,
like
ooh. So I actually here's what I learned in the last year. The other thing I've learned: different arts. You like new language tools to play with writing. I found the audio definitely helps with dialogue. Maybe it definitely helped to understand dialogue. I had a lot of training with it with the podcast, but even with audiobooks, it emphasized that much more. With illustration, like the fact that I'm doing illustrations now, it gives me a different look at description. Because when you look at what illustration actually is, I had, so my very first guest was a very talented artist by the name of Anvu. She was the first drink and draw, and she showed me how to draw hands, and she made me imagine hands in a very different way. Instead of looking at a hand as a hand, look at a hand as a square and a bunch of rectangles. And suddenly it was like, right? And suddenly I was like, wait a minute, all of this is just like a giant Lego puzzle. So, and that's what it is. Like it's a bunch of little shapes that make much more complicated ones. And that's such a really interesting way. Like it made me look at the whole concept very differently. So now when I look at imagery in the story, and hopefully we'll see, like novel 2 is going to be, I know it's going to be way better than novel 1. How much better remains to be seen. But the thing I've learned is I understand like the little pieces a lot more now that I've done more stuff, so that the next time around I'm going to be better. And honestly, I think that's what it's taught me. Like it's taught me to have more fun. It's given me more tools in my toolbox, and it's also I discarded perfection a long time ago, but really, yeah, there's just so much value in just doing
Teach
it.
Me how? I'm such a perfectionist. Like that is like my Achilles heel. Yeah,
is the enemy of good.
It's like when you have like that image in your head, like whatever that image in your head or that concept in your head that you want to bring out. I kind of like, so I've used this example on my podcast a few times. I did it with Mog and I did it with a few other people. Salt. I use this little thing. So there's a difference between iodized salt and sea salt. If you look at them under a microscope, iodized salt is perfectly shaped, perfectly functional, all that it's processed, and you can tell it's processed. Look at sea salt. Sea salt has these like little black flecks in it, like these little flaws in it. Now, if you were to actually look at taking up iodized salt, you'd have a heart attack. Taking up sea salt won't create the same effect. And the reason, ironically, why is it's those little flaws.
Right.
So the thing you got to remember. So the thing we have to remember, I think, as a writer, as an artist, every story has been told. There's no, in terms of the plot concept, there is nothing new you bring to the table. What you bring to the table is you. And all those little flaws, all those little things, those little things that you're like, I could be better, could be this. There's always room for growth. But the truth of the matter is, absolutely, JD's absolutely right. The name of the game is definitely fun. Fun is a big part of it, but it's also the fact that your voice is what makes things fun. It's what makes your story. It's what makes your story sing. They always do. It's not if it was perfect, right? It would suck. I'm just saying it would suck because once it was perfect, you would never have the desire to write another story again because you've done it once. It's perfect. But the fact that it's not perfect, you can change and grow and tell a new story each and every time. And as long as you are constantly changing with what you're doing, you will never tell the exact same story because your voice will be different. And that's the secret. Like I realized, like it's not about that perfect story. It's about a good story that I had fun telling, hopefully created an emotional reaction. And if it doesn't, okay, cool. I'll try another story. I don't fear failure. I just learn from it. That's kind of how I approach it. So
perfect can also stall you out too. You could have a good story, but because you're so caught up on catching every little tiny issue and fixing this or that and the other, you could go years before you ever publish it because you're never going to catch everything. And every time you think about something, you will find something else. So it stops people from moving forward.
And it's also diminishing returns because you don't grow. Like the fact is, there's something to be said about, again, absolutely. You should definitely polish, get a good editor, find people that really know what they're doing. Because sometimes you don't. Sometimes I'm just the pretty one there. Ooh, I did that? Really? Cool. Right. But the thing about that, right, is you have to recognize too, there comes a point where at least at this point in your life, this is the story you can tell. Right. And that's not a bad thing, right? Because if you wait too long, the story completely. I remember this. I have a broken novel. I had a really cool idea, and I broke my novel because I took too long to write it because my voice,
you were just in a different place at that point.
Yeah, no. You become better. I always am the pretty one. Absolutely, Joe. Remember that. I am the pretty one. I'm good with that. I'm totally good with that.
I think he's buttering you up for something.
Yeah.
Joe wants a favor.
Yes. But like I said, what I'm saying is, like, there comes a point, like, you got to recognize, like, this is the story I can tell at this point in time. I broke it because it was just like I had changed as a person to such a degree that going backwards, I can't match. Like, there's something about that. There's something about that voice when you first tell a story. You can't match it, no matter how much technically better you become. It's almost like you have to build. It's so hard to retell a story you told at a younger age because that person's voice matters. You're not that person anymore. You're somebody else. And that's a really great respect for Terry Pratchett's Carpet People for that reason, because he told a story that he wrote like 20 years later. His 12-year-old Terry started, and it was like, that was his problem. 12-year-old Terry had just as much a right to tell that story as he did. And he recognized that. And it's so hard to do.
That's that makes me think of two things as an editor. Like, one, don't spend forever on that first chapter, because by the time you get to the end, you're going to change that first chapter to match what you've developed. Because your voice, as you get to know the story, I feel like is going to change, is going to develop. The characters you're going to get to know them more. And a lot of times that first chapter will feel like, wow, I wrote this when I didn't really understand who my character was.
I'll have to come back to you on that one, because actually it's the first chapter is actually one of the ones I work on the hardest, because the goal is to draw you in. But all I
right. But I feel like I meet a lot of people who get stuck in chapter 1. They can't move past it.
You're talking about in the writing process? Yeah.
Yes, in the writing process. Not the editing process.
No.
But the second thing I was thinking of as an editor and as someone who sometimes paints, there is such a thing as putting too much paint on the canvas and ruining your picture. And the same thing goes with editing. There's such a thing as too much editing. There gets to a point where you say, okay, like you were saying, diminishing returns. I've gotten this the best I can get. Any more work and messing around with it and trying to make it better is actually going to make it worse at this point.
You can edit the voice right out of a story.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then it's not much of a story. It doesn't matter how technically good it is. It's not much of one. Like it's the fact that all our voices are different. What writers, it's what writers bring to the table. It's what each guest brings to my show. It's not the fact that I'm just, I can talk to anybody. It's the fact that they have their own unique take on the universe. And if they bring it out, it's a different interview. It's a different story each and every time. That's the thing. I don't want the same interview. I want people to be engaging. I want people to do that. I don't want the same story. I want to tell it my way, because what I care about is not what you care about. And that's awesome. I can't tell a Julia Allen story. I certainly can't tell a Katie story. Katie's great. Right. But the thing about that is, like, we all bring our own stories to the table and our own experiences to the table. And to make that not, like, that's what matters. Like, that's what we get out of life. That's using the salt thing again. You're the salt going into the water, and when you come out, you're a different kind of salt. Like, that's what we do. Like, we experience life, and we share those experiences in our stories. That's what makes great stories.
Mm-hmm. Yep, having the fun, but also putting the heart into it as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, Katie is very sassy, and I love it.
My characters are. I'm nice. I'm nice and sweet. I don't know what y'all are talking about.
Right.
No, so that's the trick right there. The characters say all the things that I wouldn't.
Right. That's the best, is you kind of get to, like, do the purge of, like, you can say it and I can't, so I'm gonna get it out of my system. That's why writing is so therapeutic, right?
It is. Oh, so it is.
I do want the last couple of minutes for you guys, if you guys like want to make any announcements or talk about what's coming up for you, and where we can all find you. So if you want to get started, Josh, tell us what if you have anything like you want to talk about your book coming out.
So I'm not quite ready to announce when the release date of the book is, because it's not done. I'd rather at least get to the point where my editor is eviscerating before I announce the release date. It's good to at least get to that process before you announce one. But the next book will be called Lights Out. It'll be hopefully out in the springtime. It's a short, fun little dime novel about lights out in the apocalypse and where humanity goes in those moments. As for my podcast, episode 500 airs. Well, it was going to air this Friday, so I think I'm gonna. JD's probably listening to this. I'm gonna get him on this one a little bit. He had a little conflict tonight, so we're moving that chat to the weekend. He's going to be my 500th episode, and I've been doing this now 5 years, 500 episodes. It's been a heck of a ride. I have met some incredible people, and I kind of just want to say this here and other places as well. Thanks, guys. I have had such a wonderful ride meeting each and every one of you. It has been an incredible experience. I wouldn't change a thing. Hopefully I do another 500, and we'll kind of, maybe by the time I get to episode 1000, I'll be on like a giant network making zillions and zillions of dollars. Who knows? Maybe, right? But on the same token, I have truly enjoyed meeting each and every one of you, and I appreciate each and every one of you for making my life better, getting to know you. So thank you guys very much for everything.
Oh, that's very sweet.
That's amazing.
Yeah, 500 is like, you should definitely be like patting yourself on the back and like very excited about that. It is such a milestone. I know, like, doing a show is not the easiest thing. Some days you're just not feeling it and your brain's not working and cooperating, and like, congratulations very much for hitting 500. And I'll actually be on your show on Thursday, right? The 4th?
Is it Thursday? I thought it was next week. I could be off. I could be off on the scheduling there. Is it this? I thought it was next Thursday with you. I could be wrong.
Oh, we can talk about that later. And
Yeah, we can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you are coming on this month because because I haven't interviewed you yet.
Yeah.
I haven't interviewed you yet. I've interviewed you, and Katie's coming on at the end of the month because I haven't interviewed her from the. I asked you. Remember last time we talked? I guess not.
Nothing like putting her on the spot in front of the camera to get her booked. I love it.
No, she already said yes. It's not like it's not. I would never do that. Like I would never ask somebody to come on a show like this, like on the air. Like I may say I want you to come on the show, but I'm not saying. But that's one thing. But the other thing, it's like I wouldn't do that. It's just it's not putting people on the spot, and they don't necessarily want to do it. And I don't want to put them in a position where they feel like they absolutely like. I want to interview practically anybody. I mean, there's a great story of everybody, but I wouldn't have brought it up if she hadn't already said yes. Now if she's forgotten she said yes. That's not my problem.
And that's entirely possible.
Right. But
that is entirely possible, though. I think Julia, Josh, you know already, and Joe listening in the background knows that you pretty much message me and go, "Hey, you want to do a show?" Okay.
I get that, but I wouldn't do it here. I would do it off the air.
Yes.
Yeah. I would do it off the air, and
forgetting is definitely one of my strong points.
Yeah.
All right. So one announcement Katie has is that she's going to be on Josh's show. Just joshing. Real Josh, where can we find you? And then I'll let Katie make her announcements and stuff.
So if you guys want to support me, there's a couple ways you can do it. I'm on YouTube as Joshua Pantalleresco. You can hit the subscribe button and for notifications and all that stuff. I do content practically every day. The audio archive is almost completely caught up, so it'll just be videos. Practically videos from here going forward. I still got to finish reading out Alice in Wonderland. I do read stories on my podcast from time to time. Although with my current schedule, it's the Alice in Wonderland is going to be the last one I officially do. I might do the rest on my Patreon. But you can follow me on my YouTube channel is Joshua Pantalleresco. My Twitch channel is just Joshing Podcasts. That's also my Patreon. If you guys want to donate and support the show, you can do so. Patreon.com/JustJoshingPodcast, Twitch.tv/JustJoshingPodcast. I'm there. I do regular streams. I do regular stuff. I get better at the Patreon. I promise. I think I got the show nailed down now. It's taken about a couple of months, but I think I got it. So, yeah, like I said, that's what I'm up to.
Great. And Katie?
All right. So easy to find. Where's there it is. There's my name. KatieSalidas.com is my one-stop shop to find pretty much everything that I'm attached to. All the social media, the Spilling Ink page, my personal YouTube page, where I am also doing readings. Every Sunday, I am reading from the Asset series. We are on book 2 right now. So if you missed book 1, you can still catch all of the episodes on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Katie Salidas. I'm trying to keep it easy. And as Julia had mentioned earlier, my latest and greatest book, which you can tell has gotten some use, wrote the damn thing, and I'm using it too because it's a great quick reference. But my handy dandy guide to writing and self-editing the book just released at the end of 2020. I think it came out just in time for Christmas. And if you are having trouble finishing your book, this will not only provide motivation, but tips, tricks, and cheat sheets.
Yes, it's a very, very, very great resource. Yeah, so excited to get into it. Yes, links. Thank you, Joe. And I, as always, am your host, Julia Allen. Like I said, I write as J.K. Allen. I am actually doing re-releases of my books. So I'm going through each story and thinking about if I want to make any changes or, anything like that, making new covers. You can find everything about me at hijinkswriter.com. I do also offer author services, so author coaching, social media content calendars, launch schedules, editing, line proofreading, and developmental edits. And I'm into doing promotional graphics and marketing, which is so much fun. Oh my gosh, I'm such a nerd. I'm having the most fun making graphics in my life. So find me at hijinkswriter.com. And like I said, I'll be on Josh's show later on this month. Very good about that. And I think that's all we have, unless I'm wrong, Joe. Is it time to say the magic words?
Come on, Puppet Master.
Puppet Master gotta let me know. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Season 2. It's always time to go indie now. And with that, we'll say goodnight.